Okay, testing. All right. So everything on my end says that we are good to go. Thank you, Seth, for working hard to get this in place so that we have a place that's a little bit more safe. Evidently, and I won't ever mention this again, but evidently last week, I went long and it was streaming. The Zoom call was streaming to not only to our YouTube channel, but there was a lot going on, and somebody found us and hacked in. So Zoom, from our research, does have that openness about it. It seems to be susceptible to attacks like that. What we're going to do with this, Seth has convinced me that this is a way to do what we do. So, for instance, on our Wednesday night, when Jonah and I record, we use this platform, and it works wonderful. People can give us questions, comments, and so all of that works really well. So we're just going to carry it into the Saturday morning, and any other number of events that we want to host, we might want to get together privately and talk about any number of topics, and this platform allows us to do that. So it looks like we have 29 people who found their way in here, and there may be others later, but what we've got is Seth has a place on verification, a tab for verification. Once we know someone, we can let them in. But like what we were doing in Zoom is we had quite a few people who were just showing up, and we would let them in, let them in, let them in. I was letting some in, Seth was letting some in, and evidently one of us let some bad hombres in the room, bad actors. So today, as you know, if you were in the class, hopefully all of you were there, I talked about holy wars, the holy wars, and I really would like some of your input. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts. So let's see if straight out of the gate I can get some of you to raise your hand. You can, if you don't feel like going public by voice or by picture, maybe you can just type a message. But I want this to be interactive. This is okay, I see Dave. I'm going to let you get the microphone. Can I hear you, Dave?
Hey, I'm here.
Good deal.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Again, I'm so emotionally off after all this. It was great to hear your class today and to see all other people, not all other people, but other people on the class agreeing. There's no more blurriness. It's either you're with us or you're against us. And a lesson I'm being taught, and I'm 65. Lesson I'm being taught is that a lot of Christians are helping me, and
Yep.
I don't ask why they're helping, but it's opened my mind, and please forgive me, I'm not a Christian. It's it's just something that I've opened my mind to, and they don't ask what my religion is. We're just helping, like someone's passing the sandbags because the flood's coming. You don't ask if who they are, what color they are. You don't ask their religion. So I just wanted to say that I think there's a division happening, and I see it happening, and with the so-called movie stars, and there's a division there. It's mostly pro-Palestinian, and the comedians that are sticking up for Israel are amazing, and it goes on and on. And I think that people should know when they come to us, it's United Israel World Union. As David Horowitz said, without a united Israel, there is no world union. Of course, he was implying on, the chapter in Ezekiel. And so I just wanted to say, when we both come together, Jacob and Joseph, the world's is gonna pay if it comes against us, and it's written in every holy book there is. Anyways, great class, and I'm glad
let me jump in, Dave, while I got you. I wanted to just
Sure.
from a United Israel perspective, we're both vice presidents in United Israel, and
Right. Right.
I had a lot of good conversations with Seth. We spent a lot of time together. And one of the things
Yeah.
that came up, and you and I talked a little bit about this, Dave, late last night, but maybe for the benefit of
Yeah.
others,
Sure.
I don't want people to think, and maybe it's inevitable that people are going to think what they want to think, but I don't want people
Right.
to think that it's my way or the highway, that you agree
No.
with Ross or else I'm going to boot you, because I don't expect people to agree with me on everything, but I do and have drawn a line, and I've
Right.
canceled people. I don't mean in the woke sense that people always talk about cancel, but uh, I've canceled
Right.
people who are giving me money and told them I don't want your money. If someone
Right.
if someone is against Israel, and people might want to say, well, there's more to the story, it's complicated. Well, I can't zoom over, I can't turn the camera. I have 3 shelves full of books on the Middle East conflict. I've read a lot. I've made my
Right.
decision. I'm standing with the Jewish state. I don't feel like they're right in every single action. But Dave, as an officer of United Israel, I will draw the line on this. I don't care if somebody's a Republican or a Democrat or not even from this country or whatever. But if they're if they're anti-Israel, I don't have to be ugly. We don't have to hate one another. But I can kindly say you're going to find me to be unpalatable. You're not going to like me. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I would add another thing. If they knew who David Horowitz was,
Yeah.
the dean of the reporters at the United Nations, who on the night before the vote on Israel becoming a nation was made, we know who he
Yep.
talked to
That's right.
and who he influenced. And he gets a letter on his 95th birthday from Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah.
He met Golda Meir. He knew Natan Sharansky. I mean, he knew everybody,
Yeah.
even Nikita Khrushchev. And he was pro-Israel. He was a Zionist, and we're following the guy. In that sense, we're following the guy who said, "Let's throw off all the rabbinical and oral things of the Torah. Let's just see what the Torah says first, and let's be Zionist, and let's go back to the homeland." And that's something that has called me. I was never a joiner. After I left all the church, I went
Right.
to a few places to see. It was in 1972, so it's been a long time. But the fact is that United Israel World Union is a place to learn, and we one of the things that I'm writing up after what you and Jono spoke of, this way that the Jews were thrown out of all these lands during the Ottoman times and forward, and that kind of stuff. So when we say that who's being thrown out of whose land, we should look at the full story, and people don't want to do that, and that's an unfortunate thing. And another thing, like I said, is that I 100% I would ask those people to look at life for women and children in these other Muslim countries. And by the way, they're called the Republic, the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have no imagine if we were called the Christian Republic of the United States, people would kill us.
Yeah.
But they don't say a word to them. And the way they treat women, and I've talked about this before, and I'm not going to go on, but my mother was a leader in a man's world, and she was born in the 20s, and she ran a $2 billion financial institution, chairman of the board, and they named the boardroom after her, and she's dead now, but she had a chance in the United States, and the Jewish people give their children chances. And if you want to go and sit on the side that says, well, a girl needs to stop her education in 8th grade, well, you're not going to have any Jodel Onstadts, are you? And that's what I'm saying here is that, for me, I feel that we're on the side of right, and Israel isn't perfect, absolutely. Neither is the United States. Blah blah. But this is the side, and
Yeah.
remember when Moses, remember when the children of Israel were screwing up below Mount Sinai, and
Yeah.
I believe it was Aaron who said, "Who's on the Lord's side? Come." Anyways, I've
Yeah.
said this before. I sound like a broken record, but so do you. You keep beating in the crowd the fact that you done a great job. But it's on our mind because we love Israel, and
Yeah.
my son is buried there, and my mom and dad are buried there, and it's the land I choose
Yeah.
to die in.
Yep.
Anyways, great class. There's a lot of people. Let them talk.
Yeah.
But if you're
Let's
not
get some
standing,
people up.
if you're not standing for Israel, we don't need a lecture. I'm keeping my mouth clean here, Ross.
Yeah.
I would use some adjectives. If you're not for Israel, you can just leave and start your own group. But this is our group, and we stand for Israel.
Well,
Amen and amen.
And we're happy. We're happy that we have such a group of good Bible students and people that are seeking to do the right thing. So let's
Right.
hear some of your thoughts. Thanks, David. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. We
Talk
might
to
have to
y'all
pull
later.
you back in. Yeah. So maybe some others would like to comment on the current situation, on the biblical idea of holy war. I think when I purposely titled it "The Holy Wars" because we in this day and age, particularly with the Islamic side of the world who is calling for jihad, I think it's a good title. All right, let's see. Dr. James Tabor, I'm going to invite you to speak. Let's see if that comes through. All right.
Okay.
Hello, Dr.
I didn't know if
Tabor.
I was authorized or unauthorized. Can you
You
hear
are
me?
now, sir. You are now.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just had a simple point. I've got to leave in a minute, but I talked to a colleague yesterday, an academic colleague that you know. I won't say his name, but you and Dave know him well. You can probably guess who I'm talking about. But it's the first time I'd talked to him since the war. He's Israeli and British. And he was saying, well, the problem is this idea of vengeance. So we had a 1-hour discussion, I would say friendly but tense, in which I took the position, which I do hold, and you hear this all the time, that it has nothing to do with vengeance, it has to do with justice.
Yeah.
Vengeance would be if someone wronged me and I finally catch them somehow, if I had the power to physically stop them, and then I wreak on them, this punishment that I've decided, and whether it's legal, illegal,
Yeah.
and I think I was able to make some headway with that, but I just wanted to mention it because even in English, when people use the word vengeance, it's become a negative word. And it means kind of like an irrational lashing out at something that you consider to be evil.
Yeah.
When actually, I think the notion of justice, that justice and self-defense meted out to those who are evildoers, is the whole foundation of our courts of justice system in the Western world.
Yeah.
So, because you hear that so often from people, I just wanted to make that comment.
Let me ask you, James. I don't know how much you can say, but you're rare as an academic in a lot of ways. But let me just ask you about one thing in particular. You were one of the first scholars who signed a document that was floating around encouraging the Society of Biblical Literatures to stand up and make statements. But there is a lot going on in the academic world now. Can you share anything about your knowledge of that? Is that too general of a question? Or, with universities where students are protesting Israel
Sure.
and...
I think you posted on Discord, I saw it. You called it the best thing you've read so far on October 7th. It was by an academic at Connecticut College. I think he's Jewish, but that doesn't particularly matter.
Yep.
But he really did speak out. So if people would look at that, I don't remember the exact name of it. Do you remember, Ross?
I
I know
don't, but
it's on Discord.
yeah, I'll
Yeah.
look and see.
Yeah. I would like everyone to read that. My experience is twofold. If someone is not Jewish and not somewhat conservative in terms of biblical things, thinking the Bible is something to pay attention to, they will tend to go with the line of free Palestine and the oppression and so forth. But so much of it is ahistorical. That is, the young people, the college age kids, you can just write off. They couldn't tell you what happened in 47, 17, or anything else that's happened all the way probably back. The thing I often point out, and I might have said it on one of the Zoom meetings, is that the census of the city of Jerusalem in 1900, also up to 1940, is one of the last ones we have. There were more Jews in the old city of Jerusalem than any other population.
Right.
So, what part of the rhetoric that you get from everybody, because this is called the Al-Aqsa wave or flood, and we heard that from the unspeakable name that spoke yesterday, and actually said the Israelis killed those people.
I know, I saw that.
It's unbelievable. Evildoers, it was at Nuremberg as well. They deny what they did, even though they're evildoers. You'd think they brag on it, like, yeah, we did it to the Jews. Hell, F the Jews, we enjoyed it. But instead, he go, oh no, we would never do that. And yet, in their own speeches, they say it all the time. But anyway, so back to my point, the students and many of the faculty, even faculty, we've got a tape from a guy at Chapel Hill that I sent to you, Ross, and David has it, I believe. And he does this 45-minute spiel nonstop, and the students are clearly intimidated. Then he goes, any questions? And it's deconstructing the word terrorism. And he's essentially saying it doesn't mean anything. We were terrorists when we bombed Iraq.
Yeah.
We were terrorists in Vietnam. One person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. Mm-hmm. And that's the value. Those are the values that have been passed on. Now, Jewish faculty, as I started to say, are of two minds. I think some, through a sense of what to do with their own Jewish faith, and usually they would be called secular Jews. On our faculty, for example, some of them probably agree with much of the position that I would take and the position you're taking. But I don't think they're willing to speak out because they're afraid. Not just of like being beaten up or something, that could happen too.
Right.
But more the pressure of what it's like in a faculty meeting or in a all universities have these general faculty meetings, departmental faculty meetings, and essentially the so-called woke crowd has the mic.
Yeah.
I was always known as a Zionist when I was there, just because I was digging in Jerusalem with Shimon Gibson. We were called Zionists, as if that's a nasty word, like the N-word or something. Like Tabor, I think he's a Zionist. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So what's happening is some are speaking out. A lot of people that signed that petition you mentioned for the Society of Biblical Literature were on that list, and many are not attending the Society of Biblical Literature for that reason.
Yeah.
And I am now one of those for a variety of reasons, but that was my I was going to San Antonio, but I wasn't going to go to that because of the reaction they put out to the letter, which basically said, oh, everybody does bad. We're all equal, and you can't condemn one side or the other.
A moral
just
equivalence.
Like the UN.
Yep.
Yeah, but to have a UN session, we've had 3 now that have lasted for up to 6 hours. and no country except one country in Africa, maybe two, the Israel and the United States has even mentioned the Hamas massacre. How can you have a meeting of an international community discussing what's going on in Israel today and you don't mention October 7th? I mean,
Yeah.
it was unbelievable. You
Yeah.
wanted to go in there and scream and say, "What about October 7th?"
Right.
And if you remember, the ambassador did that. He took a sign and held it up and walked around. And finally, in one of the sessions, he was asked to leave because he
I
was,
like Gilad is tough, isn't he?
yeah.
Mhm.
So I have to go, but
Okay, James, I appreciate your
those are some of
insights.
my thoughts. Okay, take
Thank
care.
you very much. Okay, I've got East Alabama. I am clicking invite you to speak. Do you have your microphone ready?
I think I'm on. Can you hear me?
You are on. I can hear you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. What are your thoughts today?
Uh, Three things. Seth, thank you for bringing this to Discord. For those I've sent friend requests to, I'm actually Charles Sutton. This is just my Discord handle. I've had it a while. Item two, Ross, thank you so much for bringing that Amalek attacking the helpless today. That really helps with vengeance is mine, I shall repay. I appreciate you bringing a balance to that.
Yeah.
And and and, and I have other questions, but I have one question.
Okay.
There's a passage that I read somewhere. I don't recall where. I can't seem to find it anywhere. But when foreigners joined Israel during in the Torah, uh, they were to select a place to live, select a tribe to live in, or something like that. And I can't find that passage, and I don't know if I hallucinated it or what, but that's just my question. That's really all I have to say. I'll mute myself now.
Thank you, Charles. First of all, let me just say it doesn't ring an exact bell. I can think of when foreigners join, I can think of various things, but I think if I recall, maybe I saw something in my hectic schedule the last few days where the question came up, this topic came up from you, Charles, and it's really about, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about identifying as Israel, even if you're not like necessarily physically descended from Israel. I know a lot of people who say, well, I think that I'm a member of the lost tribes. And, and so that would be one approach where people feel like they're part of the body of Israel, but they don't have proof. Like me, I've always felt, at least in my adult life, man, I am so attracted to the Israel of the Bible. I wonder, could I be from maybe one of the lost tribes? But as far as I know, like scientifically, I've sent off and had my DNA tested, and I'm from Scotch, Irish, that European. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's the tribes. That's where the tribes went. But the way I've come to look at it now is because I don't have any proof, any evidence. So I also look at the Hebrew Bible and I see that there is a path for those who are not Israel, whether you're northern, southern kingdom, or anything. And I find that path in a lot of places. Isaiah 56 is one. Isaiah 56 is one of my favorite chapters in the Hebrew Bible, because it talks about if the stranger, the foreigner, the word foreigner there means no physical relation, but when that group decides to follow God's way, it says that God says that they have a place better than sons and daughters. So now, to your point directly, is there something that says when it comes to land distribution, whether you're talking about the Pentateuch or the prophets, the land is distributed among the tribes, and those who marry into those tribes they would also have land in that. But I don't know of a verse right off the hand. So if you come up with something, Charles, let me know, because I'm certainly interested in looking at that. I see Dave Tyler has posted the Declaration of Abruat, which is also a very interesting document. Obviously, the Scots, and they claim that they come from the tribes of Israel. So there's a lot of that in Europe. Okay, if that's it, I will call on the next speaker, which is Eric. Charles, if you find that, let me know, brother. Eric, I am inviting you to
Hey,
speak. You
I've got
should.
other people looking for it.
All right. Well, you let me know what you find. Hey, Eric, how are you, man?
I'm doing quite well. Finally getting my voice back, I guess. But I had two things. One was I've discussed a little bit of this with Charles, and the one thing that I'd forgotten to pass on to him is that my dad wrote a book of the called the German migration uh, to Missouri, and in there he has a family tale, if you will, of the first Nagel and references a couple things, and I traced it around, and it sounds like it could be connected to one of the northern tribes that end up going over to some island off of Great Britain. And so it's like just fascinating to me about all that. But the point of if you're adopted after you claim to be a son of the Most High, you're considered even better or more precious, if you will, than the natural born. Makes me feel like, hey, I don't need to worry about whether my father's tale was correct, that he had heard from grandfather, great grandfather, all the way back. So it's just fantastic to rest in that alone.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was going to point out from earlier discussion was having lived through the Vietnam War and, for instance, seeing the first blinking man-made object in the sky all the way till now gives you a perspective of history that I don't see in 2 or 3 generations. Also working it up until 2018 or 17 in a Christian school for 17 years, I saw the generations not learning anything, either from their parents or what the curriculum was, as far as what we use day to day in discerning things. They
Yeah.
just don't seem to have the background anymore. And I was just wondering about your comments there.
On the state of education of our youth in terms of just pure history and biblical history, or how exactly are you? I might have missed a piece there.
They're not. It is boiling down to that, but it's also what's the difference between right and wrong,
Yeah.
left and right, and how to plain old use common sense, which seems to have disappeared in the last several generations. Please forgive me, there are many exceptions to this rule,
Yeah.
like Seth and a whole lot of other people, but
Yeah.
what we see in the majority in the news is not us.
Well,
You know?
it's interesting, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but it might even be interesting if he's not too bashful for Seth to say, you know, what is his take on, the youth of today? I don't know. He may not want to do that. I won't put him on the spot, but as far as I'm concerned, I see obviously you look at society as a whole, and things are certainly different than they were when I was Seth's age. Um, I think there might be some things that are better. I mean, there really might be. I don't know right off the top of my head what those things are, but I can also see that there are things which are not as good, and so I don't know that I have a definitive answer as far as society as a whole, but I will just related to the class today, I'll say this. There is a growing hatred for Israel and a stronger support for the air quotes Palestinian cause. And part of that is good, caring people. They love God, they love the Bible, they believe in Israel, but they see, they're inundated with this vision of the Zionist state, and as James alluded to earlier, they don't know much history, but what is the media telling them? What is everything that's going out? And what you see is over and over, you're presented with a very negative view of Israel, the Jewish state, a very domineering, oppressive, apartheid. They don't care. They're bombing civilian areas. I mean, you see enough of that. Young people typically, whether you go back to the time of Vietnam all the way up to the present, those are the areas in history I would know best. You see that a lot of people are idealistic. They don't want war. They don't want to see children suffering. And so, but I guess my point being, I saw some stats come across this morning about how if you poll in major cities, Israel doesn't score well. There is a propaganda war. Maybe we can talk more about that at a later date. But I've got a couple of other people, Eric. Thanks for your comments. Can I go ahead and grab the next person?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for your input. I'm glad you're feeling better. Ronnie, I am turning your microphone on, I believe. Welcome, brother. Hey, Ronnie. Are you there? Now check, make sure you might be muted. I don't know. Okay. Ronnie, how about I do this? I'm going to get Tracy and I'll come back to you. I'll even leave you on the stage. Tracy, I think you have the mic. Ronnie, how about I do this? I'm going to get Tracy and I'll come back to you. I'll even leave you on the stage.
Do I have it right?
You Tracy, do. Now, you may have to mute. You may have to mute the sound.
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Do I have it right? Okay.
Now, you may have to mute. You may have to mute the sound.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. But you're getting feedback. Tracy, Seth is telling me that you have to click the headphones.
Okay, I had to turn everything off, so I hope I'm not talking over you.
That's perfect.
Thank you for taking my question. This is the first time I've ever done.
Good. Welcome.
Okay, I had to turn everything off, so I hope I'm not talking over you.
Okay, can you hear me, Tracy? All right. Okay, can you hear me, Tracy?
I can hear you, but I'm too much of a rookie.
That's okay. This is good practice. Try your question.
Well, maybe another time.
Now try it. Go ahead and I'll just be quiet and let you talk.
I'm too too much of a rookie.
That's okay. This is good practice.
Okay, I'm gonna start my question. You know, we listen to your studies and many others too, hearing people like Jeremiah and other prophets who warn the people that if they continue to live in such a way that is contrary and hateful towards the Almighty's ways, the ways of life, that he has basically stored up the enemies for their punishment. We read that in now about what happened way back when, and we feel righteousness was served. And then we see it today, and we're here contemporary, and we hate it. We hate what's happening. And then I wonder, is this somehow the same kind of thing? How come I feel so terrible that it's happening? And yet, if I was to read this, 2,000 years from now, would I feel like somehow what's happening to them now would be right, or corrective, I should say? It's very confusing to know how to set my mind and heart on these things. And I was wondering if you had some thoughts about that.
Okay, Tracy, that is excellent. It is an excellent question. It is a question, by the way, you might now have to, let me figure out how we can set this where you don't, because I can hear you coming through, so let me see something. By the way, you might now have to, what's that? Let me figure out how we can set this where you don't, because I can hear you coming through, so. Okay. So in terms of the question, I get this and I get it. I mean, I get it and I get it. I get it, meaning I understand what you're saying, and I hear it from quite a few people. So there's this one view that, like, I think most of us would look at what happened on October the 7th and say, oh no, that is reprehensible, that is horrible, that is bad, that those people that did that were wicked, they were wrong. And then what some people have written me have said in a way, and I appreciate you asking that question. I even saw that you wrote before you asked it, it could be easily misunderstood. So I am trying to answer it in calmness and in truth, and try to work through this, and maybe we'll get some input from others. We all look at it and everyone agrees it's bad and the events are horrible. We also are all aware of these biblical verses which describe the curse that will come upon. You have the blessings and the curses, and if you don't obey God's word, these things are going to happen, etc., etc. So there is a large group of people who looks at this event and that's their focus. Their focus is, and this is what I've heard from quite a few people actually, this Israel, this secular Jewish state is not the ideal, and therefore the bad that happened to them is because, and I get this more than anything, I've heard it 4 times now, people have written, it's because they have gay parades, etc., etc. It's usually most heterosexuals who look at Israel, they always include that part of it, that they allow gays, and therefore God is punishing them. I struggle with this just like you expressed. First of all, if you're writing about this 2,000, 3,000 years ago, the obvious connection would be these things have happened because we've rebelled against God. It even happens today when we have, I use this example all the time, when we have hurricanes in the South, what do people say? Well, you know, like especially if New Orleans gets a hurricane, people say, well, you know why the hurricane hit New Orleans, because it's Sin City. I don't know that I buy that. And I'm open for other interpretations or other people's input. First of all, I do think that there are a lot of righteous people in the land of Israel. I would also say that even in Israel's best times, when they were under a theocracy, the question is, did they ever behave then? No. And guess what? God still gave them a land. And he promised them that land, and he told them how to deal with their neighbors, part of which was to rules of war. Also, during the monarchy, did the children of Israel ever do what was right during the days of the monarchy? If we read 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicles, we do get a few peaks of good behavior, but they're few and far between. And yet, ultimately, they were cast out of the land, but they were there for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I don't know if my rambling makes any sense, but my point would be that even though the children of Israel are not, in today's world, not the perfect example of God's people on earth, they never have been. And so what I don't want to do is to look at a certain situation and say, they sinned. See how I'm pointing my finger? They sinned, and therefore God brought this against them. What I would prefer to do is look at the situation in its horror and call it like it is in that sense. Let me, I don't know if that answered your question, but it certainly screwed things up enough that others can jump in and help me. So let me see who the next person is to speak. And that would be, I think, Clody. Let me invite Clody to speak. Clody, do you have the microphone? I think you do.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, I do hear you.
Hi there.
Hey.
So this is my first time that my heartbeats are very raised.
Yep.
For what I'm about to try saying. It's been many days now. I think I already sent you even a message when I was really preoccupied with this feelings and thoughts that perhaps all that happened at 7th of October were a God's way to give Israel a message. And perhaps this was a theme that God wanted to correct them. Even yesterday, allow me until the end, please.
Sure.
Even yesterday, when I was, before sleeping, we always are looking at what happened and what is happening and the other people's opinions. So this was the same day for me. I saw some footages of the Nova Festival before the destruction, before the murders, the killings. And I saw there some festivities that are typical for teenagers and young people now. I don't know if they were very godly. And what made me a big impression was a Buddha statue right in the middle of the campus of Nova Festival. And I was enraged. And I was like, how can these people allow this statue be there? This could have been an idol party, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I prayed and I cried, and I was even trying to parallel these fightings after 7th of October with not Joshua's, with the moment when the spies in Moses' time gave bad report for Canaan, for Israel land. And when God said, "You shall not go to war now," people still got their hopes high, went to war, and they lost their lives. However, in all these feelings and thoughts, if we stay a bit inside the Bible, we see that in prophets, we get many times examples where God corrected Israel. Even through other nations, he allowed other nations to do bad things to Israel. But we have many times when these nations, after being allowed to do bad things to Israel, I'm sorry for my poor English.
No, it's very good. We got it.
After that, we see that God is enraged with other peoples, which means Babylon, Assyria, because I would say I was contemplating many weeks now, even before the 7th of October. It's one thing to be used by God for one purpose, and it's another thing to overdo it with the liberty that God gave you. So if we remember, I don't remember Nebuchadnezzar's son's name. At Daniel. Sorry, just a second. I'm about to finish. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Nebuchadnezzar, next was Amel Marduk or Evil Merodach.
No, his son, when that saw the writing, the successor of Nebuchadnezzar, that saw the writing on the wall, God wrote to him, Mene Mene Tekel Upharsin.
Yeah.
So I personally now do not have a saying on what happened at the night of 7th October. I don't have any saying for that. But I do have saying for the macabrity and brutality that Hamas chose to do those murders.
Mm-hmm.
And that sheds another light to what happens next. Because this overdoing or bad doing, yes, should have its answer. Hopefully, a rightful war for Israel and God's people. That was my okay. Now my heartbeat is better.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
No. Thanks for sharing, and I think that is the view. I've thought of the same idea that even in biblical text, even when God allows for an enemy to come in, almost without exception, it says they overstepped. It's easy. And this is, and I'm going to let other people talk. I just want to make one statement. It is easy in some ways for us to look at that situation. I tell you who else says that very thing, and this is just being honest. Nasrallah and the Arabs who attack Israel will say that they're not following God's way. And they say that every day, not just October the 7th. But religious Muslims will say they're living not in accordance with their God's laws. And so they feel like they have a license to do evil any day, let alone the day of October 7th. So, no, but those are interesting points. I appreciate you sharing that, Clody. I'm going to keep going down the list and let other people, maybe someone with some more wisdom on this, can jump in on that. Ronnie, I'm going to let you go next. I see you on the list. I just said I gave you the microphone. Are you there, Ronnie? I'm trying, Ronnie. Let me see if I... All right, I'm going to go to Betty, I think. Wait, Ronnie, are you there? All right, Ronnie. I'm going to Betty and I'll come back. Betty, how are you?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. I did something right for a change.
Did it grow well?
I say, Shabbat Shalom. May it come to pass, the shalom that we all look and pray for. I have so many things going through my mind right now that I'm not even sure I can even speak. I'm so emotional. But,
Yeah.
I read passages like, he who keeps Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. And then October 7th happened. And you wonder how that is. How do you reconcile him keeping Israel and not slumbering and not sleeping and this happening? And then I have friends who assure me God is in control. He's directing everything. Well, I said to this person, I don't think he directed Hamas to go into the kibbutzim in southern Israel and murder and behead and burn people. I know he gives us choices, but in what way is he in control of everything? Is he in control, or has he given people choices? And then after they've had their choice and done whatever they do, then he comes in and corrects everything. And then we have, the Messianic age, Olam Haba, whatever you call, peace. I'm just trying to fit all these things together. And it just seems like you read in Ecclesiastes, that our whole lives are a dichotomy. We have extremes of war and peace, and good and evil, and hatred and love. That's part of life. Grief, which I'm still going through, and well-being. I'm trying to reconcile all of these things. And one thing I continually pray for is that Hashem will send comfort and peace to those who are held in hostage situations, and that he will send his angels to comfort them in a divine way that we just can't comprehend.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't talk anymore.
Well, let me say, one of the reasons that I brought in Genesis 14 today is because just like Clody brought up and others have brought up, when you read the biblical text, you do get divine retribution for people not following his way. It's very clear. It's in the Moses scroll. It's in the Pentateuch, in Deuteronomy 29. It's in Leviticus chapter 26. And we can sit in our comfortable homes wherever we are, and not that we're all totally righteous, but it's to look at a situation where these families have lost their loved ones, burned alive and murdered, and you know all the things that happen, just like I do. And to be able to dismiss it as, well, you know, they probably weren't living right, and so God did this or God allowed it. It's hard for us to even say that. But here's the reason I brought in the story of Abraham. And I wasn't going to bring it up this early but I want to say this. Sodom wasn't the best place to live. In Sodom, we know, at least in some texts, that they had some really bad things to go with or going on there. But Abraham had his nephew Lot living there, and he was attacked. And Lot and his family and all their things were stolen, and they were taken captive. Now, we could look at that text and say it's probably because the inhabitants of Sodom were wicked as hell, and God caused them to be taken captive. But that's not in the text. But it does seem to be an interesting way to look at it, considering the other conversation that we're considering. But even though the people living in Sodom may have picked the wrong neighborhood to live in, may have been living an unrighteous life, they were taken captive, and Abram at the time, goes to get them. And so in my mind, I've kind of made a comparison between the captives stolen from Israel and taken into captivity in another place, not their home, and Abraham's action being compared, at least in my mind, with what's happening with the military. So I don't know. Maybe there's no real connection there, but it's. I get the struggle we all have with this. You know, how do you interpret what's happening there? We hope that the people in Israel will all become righteous. I hope that all of us can live up to God's standards, because I certainly wouldn't wish the attack of October the 7th on any of us, because we're not following God's ways by the book. You know?
Right. Well, I think, you know, on in that respect, I did when you were teaching and brought up the comparison between the story of Sodom and Abraham going after his relatives who were taken captive. I mean, I think that's a true comparison.
Yeah. Well, that's why I put it in the class. Yeah.
I still think maybe this is a call for all of us too, to look to ourselves and see how we can be better people.
Listen, Seth.
Yep. Hey, Ronnie, I can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. No, thanks for your comments, Betty.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Hey, Ronnie, I can hear you. Everyone can hear you. What you got, my brother?
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't know why my mic wasn't working on my computer, but I hooked up a mic, and maybe this will work good. My deal is on this thing, you know, like a lot of us look at hindsight because, you know, we've read text, we read scripture, commentary, and we've all seen things like, well, this stuff is going to start Gog, Magog, whatever. You know, I don't look at it like that at all. I'm going like, it would be great if we are living in a time of prophecy because we could actually see it because we've all wished for that to happen. But my question is this God's time to do that? I mean, I think that God should do something to assist Israel, but wouldn't that be great also to see God step in and do something miraculous? I mean, to me, it'd be like a calling home of all the world. Look what God is doing for the people of Israel. You know, Clody was talking about things and stuff like that, and Betty, but I'm like, I'm still looking for the miraculous. You know, what did Israel say one time? They live by miracles. They don't believe in them. They live by them.
Right.
And so I'm going like, hey, if this is the way it is, then let it be now. And if it's not, we'll wait until it's God's timing. That's all I want to say.
Well, no, thanks for your comments, Ronnie. And as an old preacher, one of the things that I also wanted to bring up, because of the comments, first of all, let me say, Clody, I think you presented that topic as best as you could. I don't think anyone could have presented it better than you did, because it is the question on the table right now. And one thing that I think about, and by the way, I see Karen, I see your hand, and Miriam, I'm coming to you next. But one thing I think about is when the children of Israel were about to go into the promised land, and Moses is still alive, they're participating in some bad things. They're not only are they doing idolatrous things with the Midianite and the Moabite, and there are even sexual problems that, with the Midianite women, and all of this is happening. But see, God promised to give them a land. And notice in Deuteronomy 9, for example, not because of your righteousness am I doing this. I'm giving you this land. I love the fathers. Deuteronomy 9 is a really important text in this regard. Now, I think a lot of people today would look at, let's say we were watching Israel in that time. A lot of us would say, they're not, God, don't you let them in that land. They're not living up to your standards. You've laid out what you want, and they're not going to meet the standards. But he doesn't say that. He not only does he bring them in and give them victory, he does it even despite the fact that they aren't living according to his ways. So I constantly go back and forth on this, and I think about that. If God said, I'm only going to protect Israel if they're righteous, if they don't attend festivals and do bad things, then he would never have a people to protect. Does that make sense? All right. I'm talking to myself. Let me bring Karen on to straighten me out. Karen, I am inviting you to speak. You now have the microphone. By the way, I'm loving this. We're getting some good input today, good feedback.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So I look at this, what's going on right now from a slightly different perspective. Like I'm going to remove the spiritual aspect and look at it more. I don't know. So and I see it like an analogy when you're building like let's say a high-rise building. And you pour the foundation, but let's say part of the foundation's not poured correctly, not poured in the right way. And then you start building this building, and as it gets taller and taller and taller, at some point, some of it's going to cave in on itself and it's going to make a mess. Now, it doesn't mean you're not supposed to be building the building. Let's say it's your property and you're building the building. You're supposed to be there. And, it made a mess, and you can clean it up and you can fix that. But if the foundation had been poured properly, that mess wouldn't have been made.
Yeah.
And that's how I see Israel right now is, if you go, I've done a lot of history in the beginning of Israel, and there was a time And I believe they were supposed, this is time for them to be back in the land. That's God's timing.
Mhm.
And, if it was done early on, the Ottomans were selling the land back to the Jews finally. They were allowing that to happen. And, many went back, some of them went back and took their land back, but not as many did not as many as should have did.
Yeah.
And, had they all been together, or had they all been one and done it together, we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing now.
Oh, I agree.
They wouldn't have the mess they're having to clean up now if they had, and just like in the Exodus, it's very, when they're supposed to be going into the land, there's fear. They don't want to, they're afraid. And so instead of doing it the easy way, they have to do it the hard way
Mhm.
because there's hesitation. There's, some people want to do it, some people don't. And I see this as just like a natural thing. This is what happens when you don't do it in the right timing, the easy way that's set up for you. You still have to do it because I still think it's God's plan, but it's harder and it's messier.
Mhm.
And that's just kind of what I'm, regardless of anybody's, whether they're living right or not, that's just, I think, a natural thing that we're seeing happen in Israel right now. And it's, according to the biblical text, it's happened before.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how I've been looking at it.
Well, and as a student of history, like you described, you've done research, and that's where you come to that. If you think about it, I mean, when you look at the plan laid out in the Jewish State by Herzl, he really, and he's secular. He's not religious, but he's trying to find a place for the Jewish people to go. They've been exiled for thousands of years. And you're right, he does meet with opposition. His plan is bring the poor of the nations to Israel, get them to start doing the work, and then they'll get it to a place where, say, middle-class people would be willing to move. And, but a lot of people, a lot of Jewish people said, we've got it too good here. Honestly, we're not going to, why would we go back and live in the desert? That doesn't sound smart or good. And a lot of those who refused to listen to the call, were caught up in the waves of the Holocaust, quite honestly.
And I actually read a lot of that in Holocaust testimonies.
Yeah.
Is, people that went through the Holocaust, they're like, we knew we were supposed to go back, liquidate our assets and go back to Jerusalem. And we say every year at Passover, next year in Jerusalem, but it was just a saying. We didn't believe it in our hearts.
Yeah.
And, because they delayed and they didn't do what they knew in their hearts that they were supposed to do, they were stuck in Germany or stuck in Europe when they knew they should have left before.
Yeah.
And I read many, many Holocaust survivor testimonies who have spoken about this.
While you're on, let me ask you this, because it's kind of related and it goes back to this discussion we're having now. I see that Dave posted, when bad things happen to good people. There's a tendency, and we find it in the book of Job too, when bad things happen, there's a tendency for those not in the bad thing to say, well, they brought that on themselves. It happens to Job. Job's friends are all quick to tell Job that the reason your kids were killed in that field, which is an interesting connection to what happened at the festival, but because, Job, you must have some hidden sin, or you're not living right, or you having marches in the streets from people who are sexually oriented wrong. I find that there is a tendency to, but what if it's not? Like Amalek, for instance. Amalek we don't get the image that Amalek attacked Israel because Israel wasn't doing right. We just get the image that Amalek is just wicked as hell and he attacked innocent people. Could there be, and this is just maybe not just for you, Karen, but others, could there be just bad actors that they're not sent by God to kill and murder and rape and burn?
Right.
Is that a decent question
Yeah, no,
worded?
and
Or
I think everything that's happening right now is bad actors.
yeah,
But, you know, I still see it as they could have protected themselves a little bit better from bad actors had everyone gone early on
yeah,
instead of just the poor.
yeah. There's
You
something
know, it's like
about
if
yeah. Go
you're going
ahead.
to
I'm sorry.
build a business, if you're going to build a house, if you want to make sure it's done right, you want to make sure you have poured the best quality foundation that you can. Don't, if you do it on a budget and you cut corners, you're going to pay later,
That's right. That's right.
regardless of who's acting or what. It's nature. It is what it is.
Good
And
comments.
I'm not saying that it's because anybody's sin, they were having a whatever worship. That's not how I'm looking at it. It's just, this is an unfortunate incident that was, created by bad actors that, they could have been stronger or prevented it had they had a better foundation early on.
And by the way, I would say that two things need to go forth. One is a call to the people of Israel and those who support Israel and the God of Israel. Maybe we should all pray and say, hey, if there is sin, if there are things that you're living contrary to God's ways, let's for sure repent. Let's try to get that right. But anyway, no, good comments, Karen. I'm going to get Julia now. Julia, you should have the microphone. How are you today?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. So this is also Claire.
Okay.
When we used to do it the other way, my daughter put that on. She's no longer with us. She passed away, so I don't know how to get it off. So this is good, so I can actually have my name.
Okay. All right.
Thinking about everything I've heard, what Clody said, what comes to mind is what God said when He said, "All souls are mine,"
Yeah.
and that there are people, nations, whatever, doing all are going to be chastised by God because all souls are His. And when we're sitting and trying to figure out why this happened, we may not be able to do that. I mean, we don't have a Moses, we don't have the prophets, we don't have a Jeremiah and Isaiah going through saying this is why. So we don't have that. What we have is this wonderful book that we can look at that is a guidebook, and we can all try to figure out why it's happening. But if we go all the way back to the garden, it started with one person, then two people. And we are supposed to do what it is that we are supposed to do. Because God said there's going to be two types of people, the wicked and the righteous.
Mm-hmm.
That's what He said. So, whatever's happening, we like to sit back and say, because like you all said, it's easy when you're not in it to say, this is happening because they did so and so. If God were to come right now and everyone knew and it was time for us to be judged all over the world, all different factions of religion, do you know how many people will be very nervous?
Yeah.
Because all over there are people doing what we should not be doing.
Yeah.
So it's a very hard thing to sit back and say, this is why. When they're doing what they're like the horrible thing that Hamas did, and people want to sit back and say it's because this happened, and there are people who want to say there should be peace and Israel shouldn't be doing what Israel's doing what it is they're supposed to be doing. Because just like you brought out in our class, when Abraham went and got Lot, Israel is doing what they're supposed to do, which is we cannot let this happen. We have to go and get these people, and we have to. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So when people want to sit back and say Israel shouldn't, I shouldn't have.
Yep. Yep.
There's a lot of stuff going on, and we don't have anyone here who can say this is why it's happening. This is this, and this. We can't. We don't have it.
Yeah,
That's
it's
all.
no matter how bad I mean, as the nation, even the secular government of Israel has to do what it has to do. The religious implications are something separate, but they can't be excluded. We have to think about that too. So thanks for your comments, Claire.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Miriam, my friend, I think you now have the microphone. Miriam. All right. Can you tell us, Miriam, you might have to unmute? I can hear you now. It's. I think you're beginning to come through. I don't hear you now, Miriam. I tell you what, Miriam, I'm not going to forget you. If you figure it out, jump back in. I'm going to go down to Jim. Jim Brumgard, you should have the microphone. We'll come back to you, Miriam. Hey, Jim. Oh, Jim.
Morning.
There he
Well,
is.
actually, it's afternoon here.
Hey, Jim. How's it going?
Oh, very well. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I'm using a headset, so.
Okay.
Oh, I can't get this. I'm getting a weird feedback.
You want me to come back to you, Jim?
I guess we'll have to till I work this out.
Okay. By the way, good job. You made it this far. We're going to get better and better at this. Let me roll down the list here. Taking in order. Let's see. Let me get to my screen again so that I can do that. Okay. United Israel, David. Yes. I think I gave you the mic. By the way,
I did.
I see others. I'm getting to you, and just bear with me. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, just a few things. So, in my life, I switched my life very much since growing up as a Catholic and leaving at 11 years old and going through a lot of paths that I'm sure many of you followed or similar paths. And I'm reading the book, Proverbs, everything's going to work out for you because you're doing the right things. And I wasn't doing it all right in the beginning, I'm going to say that, but I was headed that way. And then, I get a call from an emergency room in Omaha, Nebraska, and my son is dead. And,
Yeah.
well, wait a minute. I was doing everything right, and my son died. And, really, really pushed my faith to another level and another limit. So, first of all, I don't believe my son died because he was doing wrong things or I did wrong things. So one of the things that I see missing in a lot of these discussions is the Almighty is the judge here. So for us to say this happened to Israel because of their idolatry, that to me is not us to say. We are not qualified to speak like that, nor is anyone qualified to say that my son or my fathers or my grandfathers were bad actors. It's up to the Almighty to judge what happens, number one. Number two, this coming back after all these years, I believe, is found in prophecy. And those people would be judged if they are bad actors, whoever they are, will be judged by the Almighty. But we were giving an exact order to reestablish this land, and yes, to follow the rules. I get that. But God does things in his time. And this is the beginning of a whole new era, you know, in the seventh millennium since Adam. And again, you know, I believe in the Genesis and the Big Bang way of thinking. So if you want to read that book, I'm not saying the earth is 6,000 years old. But when things were aligned, it's been 6,000 years. The other issue is these people are doing it in the name of their God, which is not the Almighty. It's a God they created. And so they're evil people doing evil things, number one. Number two, the other issue that I wanted to bring up is that we've had this ever since Adam and Eve, and God gave us free will. And we're not inherently evil. If we choose to do evil, we're evil. If we choose to do good, we're doing good. My point is that that most people that I've ever met in Israel are doing good. Again, things happen. You know, I was thinking of all the people that were taken as slaves and brought to America. We did the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, were all those slave people good people? No, they weren't. They were like us. They were good and bad slave people in terms of their moralities. But it was unjustified to keep them as slaves. And we changed that in this country. And so today, you know, there's a lot more freedom. I know there's still issues, but the issue is we corrected those things and we're heading towards the right direction. And my point is that I see that in Israel. The other thing I'll make a comment on is look at the progress that Israel has made for the world and that little piece of rock. There's 300, 400 million Arabs around them, and they pump oil out of the ground and make money and want their jihads to happen. But in Israel, we have better technology, we have better medicine, we have better agriculture, on and on and on. And just do that comparison. Again, I'm not being God and judging. I'm just saying what I see when I go to Israel. I see Muslims that can drive a car if they're female,
Women
can get a PhD if they,
women, yeah.
And so all of that, you know, you just go over the border and they say to that woman, hey, listen, we don't want a woman to be educated after she's in 8th grade or whatever. And that's the culture that they're in. And I see the culture. Democracy allows a lot of bad things. We have it here in the United States. But I believe this is, you know, in God's way. And so I'm not talking about the people in this group. I'm talking about the way the world has judged them. I see Clody saying that it's not up. I don't mean that at all, Clody. I mean that it isn't for us to judge those things, yet the people in the world, Ross has had to kick some people out because they just go on that way. And it might be true. Maybe this punishment did happen because of what they've done. My point is, we're not the judge of that. The Almighty is the judge. And you know, and I love the Vino Melchino. He's our Father and He's our King. And so let that happen. And the issue is at the end of the day that Israel is a light unto the nations there. And I yes, they have problems, but I see this as part of God's divine plan. And as you were saying before, you know, even under David's rule, there was a lot of bad things going on. And so I let the Almighty be judged, but He still loved them, and He still made promises that it will happen. And so at the end of the day, I think a lot more people are considering God in Israel now than they were before, number one. Number two, I think that there'll always be people there that we 100% will not ever believe in any kind of creator. And that's just the way the world is. So if we're waiting for everyone to be perfect, that won't happen in our lifetime or in any human lifetime because we have free will. That's what
Yeah.
I wanted to say.
Hey,
And so I
thanks.
think God is moving ahead the way He should. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dave. One thing I want to add, and I'm going to pick up these next couple of speakers. While Dave, when he first started talking, I was already pulling up. Those that know me know that one of the people that I really look up to is Martin Luther King Jr. And I know different people have different opinions of the man. I'm just saying, I am greatly appreciative of his work on behalf of justice and righteousness in this country who had lost its way. And what he says, I think perhaps the most moving of all the moving, I have a CD on my shelf. I was looking for it a minute ago because I thought it was here, but of all his great speeches on CD, and I've listened to them so many times I can't tell you, but in the last speech that he made before he was assassinated, it's called The Mountaintop or whatever, but you'll remember it repeated the refrain, somewhere I read in freedom of speech. Somewhere I read, and he goes through all of these rights that the Declaration of Independence gives to the people, and in particular to African Americans who at the time were not allowed without being beaten or abused or whatever. He was speaking on behalf of his people. And I think it's time for the Israelis to take assessment of like Dave was talking about, the rights that they've given. If you look at the Declaration of Independence of Israel and you read that document, it will floor you because it gives rights to people who didn't have rights. If you ask Dave and I, many of you have friends that are Arabs who live in Israel, and you know what they love? They love living in Israel. They love being part of Israel because they have rights that no other Arab nation of the world has. And unfortunately, in some of the religious people's minds, some of those rights they don't agree with because they don't agree with the priestly literature of their Bible. And but again, you have to come and look at it. We don't, like I asked someone the other day, I'm not a homosexual, in case you didn't know. My pronouns are he and him, very clear. But do I, at any point, think that I should run for office on a platform that says, here's what we should do? We should stone to death people who are homosexual. This was my question to someone who was very upset that I was talking about the freedoms that the modern state of Israel gave to its citizens. So my question was, who brings in this biblical law that you want to see come in? Who's the one who's going to throw the first stone? This was my question. Or to Dave's point, committing adultery. I mean, think of that. I mean, there are a lot of things that don't line up. I think we ought to wait to bring that form of government on someone else. Now, I'll tell you who doesn't agree with me on that. People who support the Sharia law, where if a girl sleeps with someone before she's married, there are punishments for that. There are, in some countries, if someone steals, they should have a limb severed. Anyway, I think that we need to think about how do we move to the next step. And I think the first step is we ought to have somebody in Israel saying, somewhere I read, and then give these beautiful democratic type sayings that are found in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, I rattled enough. Let me see who I've got here. Eric, I'm going to give you the microphone here. Let me see. Wait, let me try Jim. Jim, let's see if I can get you one more time. Jim, let's see if you're working now.
Is this working now?
It is working now. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, Jim, good.
Yeah, there's a number of things today that you've talked about hit home real well. For example, you mentioned Genesis 14, where Abram goes after Lot's family and rescues them. I thought, well, that's a perfect example to justify what's happening today in Israel, where they're going to try to rescue the hostages. The other thing that you hit home on is how what they're doing certainly compares to the actions of Amalek.
Yeah.
That's certainly something that I've hit on. Thought of almost immediately when that happened.
Yeah.
Regarding the idea of this part of the conversation today has been, are they righteous enough to avoid being attacked and all that? When somewhere it is written, I like how you were talking about that, and I can't recall the specific verses. I know it's in the prophets, that when God calls them back and calls the all of Israel from all points of the earth to return, he doesn't say you have to be righteous yet to come back. He's bringing you back. We can
Yeah.
work out the righteousness issue later. We can, learn how to follow God's ways. So that's certainly something that I can see, for the return. Now, one thing I wanted to add, and I'll see if I can get my phone. My wife's a great explorer of Facebook and so on.
Right.
And she has come across, I'm scrolling right now to find it. There is a Sheikh, a Jordanian Muslim scholar by the name of Sheikh Ahmed Adwan, who's posted something about how even the Quran says that the promised land is for, well, he says the
Right.
Jews, but we know it's for
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah.
And he even quotes the different verses in the Quran. I don't know if you've seen that. I can send screenshots of what she did through to your cell phone if you would
Yeah,
like me to do that,
do that, Jim. Yep.
because it's amazing where he just goes on. I'm going to quote part of it. It says, Palestinians are murderers of children, elderly, and women. They attack the Jews and then hide on the backs of children, women, and elders without sparing them as if they were not their children. And that kind of activity to me almost mimics in some ways, at least in a conceptual way, the very reason why I think God wanted the Canaanites driven from the land, and that was their Molech worship, where
Yeah.
they would kill children as part of their, routine religious practices. And that's, God hates that. And certainly people that hide behind children are also people that God would hate. So
Yeah.
that's my thoughts.
Hey, send me that, Jim. I appreciate it. I have seen that, but I can't put my hand on it. So if you don't mind, text that to me. I'd appreciate that.
I will do that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to bring Carolyn in next, and then after that, I see Miriam and a few others. So, Carolyn, welcome. Let's see if we've got you. You should have the microphone now.
Hello,
Hey, Carolyn.
and thank you so much for the lesson today.
Carolyn, move your mic a little closer.
I I would like to make a comment. I'm almost 75. I'm a great grandmother,
Okay.
and I have seen religious and, and secular education go to hell in a handbasket. Okay, is this better?
You're breaking up a
Is
little
this
bit.
better?
That's better.
Is this better? Hello?
Yes. Yes,
this-
that's better. Yeah.
Hello? Is this better? Is
Yep.
this better? Okay. As a great grandmother, go to hell in a handbasket in my lifetime. many children today have been raised by single mothers, or for whatever reason, the father is not in the home, or may not be a strong person in his own right. And the children have no idea about justice, that life is really hard, it's not easy. And when something like Hamas attacking Israel happens, they have no common sense to discern justice from injustice. And as a result, they will listen to whoever is talking the loudest, whether it's a university professor or a news commentator or their favorite celebrity, and they are lockstep behind someone else's ideas. They have no ideas of their own. They have not been out in the field killing their own meat, dressing it, bringing it back, cutting it up, eating it. They have no idea that death is part of life. And the more death you see, the less you want to see.
Mm,
That's because so many women have raised the kids.
yeah.
We need men because God is not a softie. God is hard. He sends you to war. He expects you to slay everything in the path. You better do it. That's what Israel is doing to Hamas. They are eradicating evil, and eradication means you raise everything to the ground and you kill everything in the path. Israel at least gave Hamas 24 hours notice before they took it up, which Hamas did not do to Israel.
Right.
Also, one further comment. It evidently is not God's time to interfere or to save or whatever, because when he sets his hand again to save his people, no one will stand before him. And that's enough. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for your comments. You know, in our society today, a lot of people would encourage men not to be tough and not to be, I didn't grow up in that world, and so I don't get that at all. In fact, the phrase of the woke left, this whole idea that masculinity is toxic. I would hope that none of my kids or grandkids would do anything when they hear that other than snicker, because they certainly don't learn that around me. And I would hope that they don't pick that up. I think that you're right in certain things. Some people were having trouble listening to or hearing you, Carolyn, earlier, but I heard you just fine. And I think that a major problem in society, this is my view, and it's tragic that so many families end up separate, where husbands and wives are divorced and the kids are raised by one parent or the other, or they don't have a grandfather who loves the grandkids and teaches them that a lot of what they're hearing today is silliness. I think that families, one of the biggest problems in society today is the severance of families. And think about it. Dave brought up a little while ago, there's so many people that are worried about homosexuals, and that's mainly because they're not homosexual, and it's easier to point a finger at that. Few people are focused on one of the greatest crimes in the world today. It's a violation of the 10 words of God, one of which is that you are not to take the wife of another man. How many people have done that? And I think that has almost totally destroyed society today. So I'll get off my soapbox, but Carolyn, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it very much, and I think we're in agreement there. Eric, I see you, and I see that you've been on before. If you don't mind, don't forget your thoughts. I'm going to first try to get Miriam back on, because Miriam, we called on her and her microphone didn't work, and I'm going to see if I can't try that one more time. Let me see. I just saw her invited to speak. Let's see if I can do that. Miriam? Okay, let's try it out, Miriam. All right. Miriam, if you can unmute, I think that might be the only thing holding us back. There we go.
Hello?
I got you.
Hello? Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Miriam.
Thank you. My birthday was October 6th. Okay, and just as the 7th was started, all the horror started, the slaughters. And it's a scar on my heart from now on.
Yeah.
And I was not able to even vocalize this out pretty much to anybody. And I don't have a whole lot of people talk about it anyway. But Shem heard it, and he heard it all. And he heard probably too much, and with too many tears and crying. Okay. Question. I have heard of the 6-Day War, and I have not much information about it. And it seems there are similarities to what is going on now. Can you explain to me the differentiation between the two? Thank you. God bless y'all.
Hey, thank you, Miriam. And even though I'm late, happy birthday, because you mean a lot to us and you've been with us for a while. So thank you. But the 6-Day War
That means so
is,
much to me. Thank you.
hey, I know it's late, but you didn't get to celebrate long before. Maybe we'll do that again. We'll give you a do-over, they call that, where you get to celebrate another day.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the 6-Day War in the history of Israelis and their battles is something that would make for a very good class. And I have some books I can recommend. What we'll do is I'll put that on my list of things to talk about because it is an interesting story. The 6-Day War, interestingly enough, all the Arab nations of the world plotted and planned, and they thought that they could take out the Jewish state in 1967. And to their surprise and dismay, the Jewish state beat the hell out of all of their enemies, and it took literally 6 days. I have a friend of mine that worked in an industrial setting that I talked to him. He was actually an older man, Egyptian, who had moved to the U.S. and was part of that war as an Egyptian. And one of the things that he said was, I asked him, we got to be fairly good friends, and I asked him one time if he had any comments on the 6-Day War. And he looked at me and he said, Ross, it was not a 6-Day War for me as an Egyptian soldier. It was a 1-day war. We spent the next 5 trying to get away from the Israelis. And I always remember that. And so the 6-Day War was one that is certainly worth studying, and it is a fascinating study. So good point, Miriam. We need to do a little research and maybe do a class on that. But that will be coming at another point if that's fair enough. It was a miracle, as Tracy said. Okay, let's see. I've got a couple more people, and let's try Sue. Eric, I'm going to come back to you if that's okay. I just want to make sure I get everybody in there. Hey, Sue.
Hi, can you hear me this time?
I can. That new microphone is working like a charm.
Oh, that's so cool. First of all, I really wanted to thank you for the class today, Ross. It was hard to listen to because none of us want war, and none of us like to think that God will send us into a situation where we have to hurt or kill. But
No.
that is a holy land.
Right.
And that is why God is so protective of it. It is his holy land. And so, anyway, as hard as it was to listen to that, I really appreciated you sharing what you had to share. And I also, oh, thank you, East Alabama. Um, I wanted to thank Karen. I hadn't even thought about this situation being a judgment against Israel. Um, so I really appreciated Karen's input. And the reason I hadn't thought about it was because every time we would go from Jordan to Israel, we would see such an incredible difference. We lived right across the Red Sea from Eilat. So we could see Egypt, Saudi, and Israel from our living room window.
Yeah, I
And
know the place.
we would, yeah. So we would cross from Aqaba in Jordan, and Aqaba is dirty and dusty, and the trees look discouraged. It's just not a very pretty place at all. And we would cross over into Eilat, and we were instantly in this place of flourishing life.
Yeah,
And then we would drive up to Jerusalem, and I've never seen so many baby carriages in my life.
I
You
know.
know, God said that he would bless them with progeny. Oh my gosh, there's just baby carriages everywhere. And there's lots of double and triple baby carriages
Yeah,
because there are so many children. It's just beautiful to see the way Hashem is blessing.
yeah,
And so I think what we are seeing is something Dave said earlier in the week. He said that this is a time of dividing. This is where we choose, and it's where the world has to choose.
yeah.
And it is a setup, I believe, for Hashem to step in. And that's all I have to say.
Hey, thank you very much for your comments. Very much appreciate. Eric, I am gonna invite you. You know that from Louisiana. You're okay with that language.
I'm
Gonna
next door.
invite
I
you.
can come over and
That's
settle
right.
things. But
That's right.
I'm going back a little ways on some of our discussions here, and maybe this will help some relax and understand and be able to calm down, if you will, their inner self. Is that I have to look at everything with all my training that I've been through 20 something years. Everything is for our good. We are each individually, I'm speaking, on a path to become as close to our Heavenly Father as we can. That's our whole and only purpose in this life. Thus, when you see someone doing something else that you don't do, you can say they're on their own path. Bless
Yeah,
them, Father. Help them become closer to you. Not judge them. You just say what's going on in your own mind and leave it alone.
mm,
The same with everyone in the world. And the definition there that kind of helps me with is righteousness. I can say that I'm a righteous man because righteousness doesn't mean you're doing it perfect. It means you're walking in the right direction. Just as be perfect as I am perfect, perfect doesn't mean what it does in English now. It
right.
means you try your best to do what is right, which is the definition of righteousness. So we're right. We're righteous. We have our own path to come closer to our Heavenly Father, and everything that happens to us is to get us closer to Him. Thus, everything that happens not only to us, but to the world is for our good to become closer to Him. That's my sermon. Thank you.
Hey, that's a pretty good sermon, Eric. I think you must have listened to Laser Brody. Isn't that your guru? Isn't that who teaches you all that?
I've been with him for over 23 years. Yes, sir.
Very good. Hey, thanks for your comments. Look, I I'm gonna see. Let's see. I think I have one more. I think Karen is back on the mic. Karen, I just sent you an invite to let us know your thoughts. All you have to do is unmute, Karen.
Oops. Okay.
There you go.
What I just want to clarify when I was talking about earlier wasn't necessarily have anything to do with judgment. It was more like just look at it like a natural cause and effect. If you know you have cancer, you should take care of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reference an interview that I listened to with former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. And he was talking to the BBC and he was telling them we had an opportunity to eradicate the Hamas and this violent faction 20 years ago. But we listened to the West who told us, oh, don't do anything. We want peace, da 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 da. And they didn't do it. And he said, and that's on us. We shouldn't have listened to you. We should have taken care of this problem 20 years ago, and we didn't. And now we're going to do it. We're going to make sure that our country is safe for its citizens.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of mess that I was talking about is like 20 years ago, they knew they should have taken care of this mess, but they listened to bad advice and they didn't do it. And now it's worse.
Yeah.
So if you know you got a rot somewhere, you know you got an issue, it's easier to take care of it when it's small.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then it gets bigger and it's much harder to take care of.
Amen.
And that's just nature. So I'm not looking this as judgment or anything like that, or somebody does it, nothing like that. A lot of the stuff I see is just nature, human nature. It's natural cause and effect. This is what's going to happen if this, isn't done right. And that's kind of what I see a lot of going on here. Now, there's always going to be haters, of course.
Oh,
And you're
sure.
always going to have that. But it's up to you to be strong and united. And I'm glad that Israel's doing that now.
I am
But
too.
I'm just saying it would have been nice had that happened from the beginning. They would have been much stronger. But, and that has nothing to do with judgment. That just has something to do with listening to bad advice and making poor choices.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
No,
that's
good
where
points.
I was coming from.
Good points. Good clarity. Look, I want to wrap this up mainly for your sake as much as going about your day. But I want to say, I know that people have different views. And this is a very tough situation. Look, if it's easy, a lot of times the easy path is not the best path. And I tended for a long, long time to not really be too dogmatic on anything. But I've reached the place, I don't know if something happened when I turned 57. I don't think anything. I didn't feel different. But I think maybe at some point I said, I don't have to be friends with people with whom I greatly disagree. Now, with that, I have to say that what I've made a stand on since October the 7th, I think I woke up the next morning and said, I don't care. Meaning, of course I care, but I don't care to walk a tight line anymore. I want to be absolutely clear on certain things. I don't want to say it's okay, we can disagree to agree, agree to disagree, and get along to get along. I'm done with that on certain issues. And I think over the past few years, particularly someone who holds views like mine have basically been pushed into a closet and we're not allowed to say anything. Well, I'm done with that. And when it comes to this war or any war, we should look for peace and desire and pray for peace. But I'm an old Army guy. So you have to understand that everything that I think about when I look at this situation is through that training. And I think that there is a time to kill. I mean, that's what we go read Ecclesiastes 3 in its total. There is a time where the enemies have to be destroyed. And to Karen's point just a minute ago, if that had been done, but it wasn't, then this would likely not have happened. But what happens is those who are very soft, to use Carolyn's words, those who are very soft begin to say, well, we have to do this and we had to give Gush Katif, the Gaza Strip. Read the story of what happens in 2005. In 2005, the Jewish people were uprooted from their homes and forced out of the Gaza Strip. Their homes, their lives, their farms, their flower beds, their schools, their synagogues, they had to give it up. And all of this led to the point, it was supposedly to bring peace. And that is certainly not what took place. So anyway, it has been a long day. We've been here for quite a while together. Thanks for coming to the new setup, and I look forward to doing this again next week. It looks like everybody's got the hang of it now, and I appreciate all of you coming together for this. Seth has the microphone.
Hey, I was just gonna let y'all know, if you've been verified, your name's orange, or you're a member, if y'all want to continue the discussion, I set up an open voice chat under UIWU on the Discord menu. So if y'all would like to continue discussing this in a more open, kind of less structured way, y'all can set it up over there. Y'all can use video, however y'all would like to talk. It's going to be more of like a round table discussion if y'all want to do something like that afterwards.
Hey, thanks, Seth. And thanks, everybody, for joining us. Again, I put a comment. I didn't want people to think that if you don't agree with Ross, it's my way or the highway. That is not my view at all. But I have made a stand on some things, and that's, people don't have to like me. I can assure you by the feedback that I get in emails and messages and phone calls and text messages that not everyone does like me. I know that's a surprise and a shock to many of you. So have a beautiful day. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Join us. If you're part of the Yakad, you can join us live Wednesday night on this very platform while Jono and I do our next week's topic. And then if you miss that, you can watch it Thursday. And then if you miss that, you can join me Saturday. So hopefully everyone joins in the other after class discussion if you have time. Otherwise, have a beautiful day.